Hello everyone, welcome to another video of AcUK Online. This is Sir Abdullah and today we will be looking at another A2 level business studies topic, and this is organizational structures. Organizational structure is an important topic as far as your examination is concerned. We often get questions on this topic. Please remember that this topic can also be useful for you in any other course of study. If you are doing an undergrad degree and you are studying organizational structure, this can be helpful for you. So let's start the video.
Today we'll be doing a very important topic, that is of organization structures. This topic is in your A2 level business studies. This lecture can also be useful for any other course in which you have to study organizational structure. So let's begin. Now the objectives of this lecture are to explain why organizations need a structure. We will be looking at how to analyze the different types of organizational structure that can be adopted and their advantages and drawbacks. We'll analyze the main features of an organizational chart, such as levels of hierarchy, chain of command, and span of control. We will also be looking at how to explain the difference between centralized and decentralized structures and evaluate the conflict between trust and control with a policy of delegation. We will also outline the differences between line and staff authority and examine the appropriateness of centralized and decentralized structures. Explain the differences between authority, accountability, and responsibility. Now, before starting, a simple definition for organizational structure is that organizational structure is the internal formal framework of a business that shows the way in which management is organized and linked together, and how authority is passed through the organization. The very first type of organizational structure is the hierarchal or bureaucratic structure. The hierarchical structure is one where there are different layers of the organization with fewer and fewer people on each higher level. In general terms, it is often presented as a pyramid. So you can see that in this pyramid, on the top of the pyramid, we have the chief executive or the CEO of the business. Under that, we have the directors, and under those directors there will be different middle managers. These managers can be departmental managers from different functional areas. Further down, we have the supervisors who are working directly under the middle managers, and under the supervisors are the line workers. When we are looking at the hierarchical or bureaucratic structure, the main advantages of hierarchical structure are that the role of each individual will be clear and well defined. So everyone knows exactly what they are supposed to do in that organization. There is also a clear identifiable chain of command. We will be looking at what is chain of command in our further on as we move on with this video. And another important advantage is that this traditional system of hierarchy organization is most frequently used by organizations that are based on a role culture. So role culture is where the importance of the role determines the position in the hierarchy. So the functional area manager is responsible for that particular functional department. The supervisors are responsible for the particular role that they have been assigned to supervise, and so on. On the other hand, the main disadvantages of hierarchical or bureaucratic structure can be that such a structure tends to suggest that one-way communication is the norm. That means that there is mostly only one-way communication, which is top to down. That means that CEO will give the order to the director will pass the order to the manager, and manager will pass the order to the supervisor, which is then given to the line workers. This is considered to be most efficient form of communication, as the orders flow from top to bottom. The disadvantage of this sort of structure is because there is no feedback and the information does not flow from bottom to top. So the senior management might not get the feedback from the line workers, who might be in a better position to explain or change some things that might be needed. There are few horizontal links between the departments or the separate divisions, and this can lead to lack of coordination between them. So when there are employees who are working in different departments, they hardly communicate with one another, or they may not have any sort of horizontal link that may lead them to coordinate and collaborate with one another. So therefore sometimes it might be difficult to achieve the organizational objectives. Moving on, the second form of organizational structure is a matrix structure. A matrix structure is an organizational structure that creates project teams that cut across traditional functional departments. So what a matrix organizational structure tries to do is that it tries to overcome the disadvantages of the hierarchical or bureaucratic form of organizational structure. How so? Because there are horizontal communication links between different departments. Managers from one department can communicate with the department managers from the other departments. This helps them come up with better decisions and coordinate and plan for achieving the business objectives. This may also result in increased motivation among the employees as they get a chance to communicate with the people from other departments, and we will look at all the advantages of the matrix structure. So the advantages for matrix structure can be that it allows total communication between all members of the team. So when they are cutting across traditional boundaries between departments in a hierarchy where only senior managers are designed to link with and talk to each other, there is less chance of people focusing on just what is good for their department. This is replaced with a feeling of what is good for the project and the business as a whole. So the whole organization is working like a team and they are aiming to achieve the organizational objectives. The crossover of ideas between people with specialist knowledge in different areas tends to create more successful solutions. And because they are communicating with one another, therefore they are able to come up with better solutions to any decision. However, the disadvantages for a matrix structure can be that there is less direct control from the top, as the team may be empowered to undertake the complete a project. When there is less direct control from the top, sometimes it is difficult to control the employees and it might cause delay in certain project completions. This passing down of authority to more junior staff could be difficult for some managers to come to terms with. So at times even people might not really like that their authority is being passed down to their junior employees, so that can be a problem. And the benefit of faster reaction to new situations is therefore at the expense of reduced bureaucratic control, and this trend may be resisted by some senior managers. So because of this reduced bureaucratic control, some traditional managers might not really like this and will try to resist this sort of organizational structure. We have been talking about levels of hierarchy. Firstly, levels of hierarchy can be defined as a level of or a stage of the organizational structure at which the personnel or employee is on, and it will have equal status and authority. We have two types. We can have a tall or narrow organizational structure, and this will have a large number of levels of hierarchy, and this creates three main problems. Firstly, the communication through the organization can become slow, with messages becoming distorted or filtered in some way. Span of control are likely to be narrow, and there is likely to be a greater sense of remoteness among those on lower levels from the decision making power at the top. So in contrast, a flat organizational structure will have few levels of hierarchy but will tend to have wider span of control. When we talk about chain of command is simply the route through which authority is passed down in an organization from the chief executive to the and the board of directors to the managers and to the junior managers and so on. The taller the organizational structure, the longer will be the chain of command, which will slow down the communication process. On the other hand, a span of control is referred to as the number of subordinates that are reporting directly to a manager. So, the number of people that are directly reporting to a senior manager or a senior authority, that is referred to as the span of control. So, a span of control can either be wide, with a manager directly responsible for many subordinates, or it can be narrow, where a manager has direct responsibility for a few subordinates. Over here we can see an example of a narrow span of control. As you can see that manager 1 is directly authority to the 3 employees, and each employee is senior to the 2 junior employees. So this is a narrow span of control. So one manager is responsible for 3 people, and among those 3 people, one person is responsible for 2 junior level employees. On the other side, the example of a wide span of control, we see that one manager is responsible over or has the authority over 6 different employees, and each of those 6 employees has authority over 5 junior employees. Now over here we have 1 is to 5, 1 over 5. So basically this is a wide span of control. So one person has authority over 5 or 6 people. So this is a wide span of control. So when we talk about chain of command is simply the level. So in both these cases the chain of command is of 3, because there are only 3 layers in the organization. So if we add up more layers, if there are more employees under junior employees, so that will increase the chain of command. Now moving on with delegation. Delegation is simply passing authority down the organizational hierarchy, and delegation has a lot of advantages and disadvantages attached to it. Firstly, the advantages for delegation can be that it gives senior managers more time to focus on important strategic roles. It will also show trust in subordinates, and this can motivate and challenge them, and it will develop and train staff for more senior positions. It can also help staff to achieve fulfillment through their work, which can be referred to as self-actualization. So we know that delegation can be really good for motivating the employees and developing their skills. We can say that delegation can be a part of the soft HRM approach, where the company tries to focus on training and developing their employees. The disadvantages for delegation can be that if the task is not well defined, or if inadequate training is given, then delegation is unlikely to succeed. Delegation will be unsuccessful if insufficient authority is given to the subordinate who is performing the task. Managers may only delegate the boring jobs that they do not want to do, and this will not be motivating. So these disadvantages of delegation can, however, be controlled by the organization or the senior managers in order to benefit most from the advantages of delegation. When we look into this, we have the two forms of centralization and decentralization. Centralization means keeping all the important decision making powers within head office or the center of the organization. This means that the decision making is the central to the organization, where the head office or the top management is the one who is making all the decisions. On the other hand, decentralization means that decision making powers are passed down the organization to empower subordinates and regional or product managers. So delegation is part of decentralization. When we look at decentralization in detail, we see that the main advantage of decentralization is that it will help motivate employees. Because of the delegation, it improves their skills and they do not get bored by what they are doing. So, the factors that will influence the decision that the business is centralized or decentralized can depend on various things. The organizational structure will change with the size and the range of activities that the business is involved in. There are other factors that could determine the internal structure of a business, such as the style of management or the culture of the managers. If seniors managers adopted a largely theory X approach, then small spans of control would be adopted in a hierarchical structure. A theory Y manager would adopt very few levels of hierarchy and may prefer a matrix team based structure. Retrenchment caused by economic recession or increased competition might also lead to delayering to reduce overhead cost. This would again reduce levels of hierarchy and shorten the chain of command. Along with this, corporate objectives will also influence the type of organizational structure. So, if one of the long term objectives of the business is to expand in other countries, then the organizational structure must be adapted to allow a regional market department. Along with that, external factors such as new technology, especially IT, can lead to a reduced need for a certain employee type. For example, managers sending messages by emails rather than letters typed by secretaries. In addition, central control might be easier by the flow of information through IT, and this could make middle management layers less important. Now let's look at the important links between organizational principle. Firstly, the greater the number of levels of hierarchy, the longer the chain of command. And this will have serious consequences for communication effectiveness, as it might take a lot of time for the decisions or communication to pass down the organizational structure. The span of control, there are going to be smaller in tall organization. Delegation, where span of control are narrow, managers are more able to control the work of the few people, so delegation is likely to be limited. Motivation levels of junior staff, as they are so far removed from senior management, delegation will be limited. And business cost, so ranks of middle managers are expensive to employ and they take up very costly office administration. Another important link is that the organizational problems associated with a tall structure have forced many firms to reconsider the role and importance of middle managers. The solution many have reached is to remove whole layers of management to create shorter structure. This process is known as delayering. So we define delayering as that delayering means removal of one or more of the levels of hierarchy from an organizational structure. Now, delayering will have its own advantages and disadvantages. Looking at the advantages of delayering, firstly, it will reduce business cost. It will also shorten the chain of command and will improve communication. It will increase the span of control and increase the chances for delegation. It may also increase workforce motivation due to less remoteness from top management and greater chance of having more responsible work to perform. On the other hand, disadvantages of layering could be a one-off cost of making managers redundant, for example, redundancy payments that the business might have to do to the employees that it is letting go of, increased workloads for managers who remain, and this could lead to overwork and stress, and fear that redundancies might be used to cut costs could reduce the sense of security of the whole workforce, and this is because the existing employees might feel that they might be fired at any time in future. Another important link will be that delegation and conflicts that can arise and potential benefits. So, delegation involves a manager showing trust in a subordinate to the extent that less control will be exercised over their work. Some managers do not like giving up control. There is a conflict between showing trust in a worker and controlling the worker's efforts. Effective delegation means slowly releasing management control in order to show more trust. With this trust comes a greater sense of achievement for the worker when the work is done well. Looking at accountability, authority, and responsibility, it is important to understand the link and the difference between these concepts. Delegation gives subordinates the authority to perform certain tasks. This means that they have the power to undertake jobs and make decisions necessary for these jobs to be completed. If this job is done poorly, then the worker is accountable to his or her immediate manager. They can be held to account and be disciplined for an inadequate performance. However, the overall responsibility of the work of the department or section, including the performance of each subordinate, rests with the manager. The manager delegates authority but not responsibility, and the blame for underperformance or mistakes within the department should rest with the manager. The thinking behind this important principle is that it is the manager who chooses the subordinate to undertake the task, allocate resources, and arrange training. And if any of these were the reason for poor performance, the manager should ultimately be responsible. Coming to centralization and decentralization, so, good example of decentralized businesses are those multinationals that allow regional and cultural differences to be reflected in the products and services they provide. Clothing retailers with operations in several countries often allow local managers to decide on the exact range of clothing to be sold in each country. It could be disastrous for a business to sell European winter clothes in Singapore. Centralized business will want to maintain exactly the same image and product range in all areas, perhaps because of cost saving or to retain a carefully created business identity in all markets. Advantages of centralization and decentralization. So, advantages of centralization is that a fixed set of rules and procedures in all areas of the firm should lead to rapid decision making. There is little scope for discussion. Another advantage can be that the business has consistent policies throughout the organization. This prevents any conflict between the divisions and avoids confusion in the mind of consumers. Senior managers take decisions in the interest of the whole business and not just one division of it. And senior managers at central office will be experienced decision makers, so they will know what they are supposed to do. On the other hand, advantages of decentralization can be that more local decisions can be made that reflect different conditions. The managers who take the decisions will have local knowledge and are likely to have closer contact with consumers. More junior manager can develop and this prepares them for more challenging roles. Delegation and empowerment are made easier and these will have positive effects on motivation. Decision making in response to changes, for example, in local market conditions, should be quicker and more flexible as head office will not have to be involved every time. Continuing with the important links between organizational principle, we look at line and staff relationship. It is important to distinguish between a line manager and a staff manager. So, line managers are managers who have direct authority over people, decisions, and resources within the hierarchy of an organization. On the other hand, staff managers are managers who, as specialists, provide support, information, and assistance to line managers. So, line managers are those who have authority over others in a hierarchy structure. For example, the sales director will have line authority over the sales manager for each of the different products the firm sells. Line managers have responsibility for achieving specific business objectives. Staff managers do not have line authority over others. They are specialists who are employed to give advice to senior line managers. They perform a supporting role to the line managers but do not take decisions. Now we move on to informal organization. The concept of informal organization can be defined as an informal organization is the network of personal and social relations that develop between people within an organization. Now, in any organization, in any business, there are two types of organization, the formal structure and the informal structure. Informal structures can either be beneficial or harmful to the business. A clever manager will try to use informal groups to the benefit of the business, for example, by avoiding personality clashes between people in different groups or by basing team working on informal groups. The problem may arise, however, that the informal group leader has more power and influence over the team than the formal leader. So the managers will have to choose supervisors carefully.
Okay guys, so this was it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned from this video. Please do leave your comments and suggestions in the boxes below, and also do give me your request and what other topics you would like me to make videos on. Thanks for watching.